They say blood is thicker than water. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes, that blood can poison everything it touches. My name is Josie Davis, and I'm about to tell you about the night I became everything my family said I was. The night I crashed my nephew's first birthday party, dressed as a clown. But before we dive into this twisted tale of family betrayal and revenge that went too far, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been pushed so far by the people who are supposed to love you most that you considered doing something completely unhinged? Drop a comment below and tell me your craziest family revenge fantasy. And if you're here for more dark family drama that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about loyalty and love, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for what comes next. Because this story, it doesn't end the way you think it will. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything went to hell. Josie Davis, 32 years old, elementary school teacher, the kind of person who still believed in happy endings. I was the sister who remembered everyone's birthdays, who brought homemade cookies to family gatherings, who listened when everyone else was too busy to care. I lived in a modest apartment on Maple Street, just 10 minutes from where I grew up. Close enough to help, far enough to pretend I had my own life. My walls were covered with artwork from my students, stick figure families with bright smiles and houses with crooked chimneys. Every drawing was a reminder of what I wanted most in this world. See, I'd been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. 3 years of hoping, praying, timing everything perfectly. 3 years of negative tests and disappointed sighs. But I never gave up hope. Hope was all I had. My sister Vera, on the other hand. Vera was everything I wasn't. 2 years younger, but somehow she'd always been the one everyone looked up to. Successful marketing executive, perfect house in the suburbs, married to her college sweetheart Thorne. And when she announced her pregnancy at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, the whole family acted like she'd just discovered the cure for cancer. I smiled and congratulated her. I even threw her baby shower. Because that's what good sisters do, right? They support each other. They celebrate each other's victories, even when their own heart is breaking. But here's what I didn't know then, and what I'm about to tell you now, is that sometimes the people closest to you can be the cruelest. Sometimes they know exactly which buttons to push to destroy you from the inside out. It was a Tuesday morning in March when my world finally collapsed. Dr. Martinez had been my gynecologist for 5 years, and she'd always been optimistic. "Keep trying," she'd say. "Your time will come." But that Tuesday, her face was different. Professional. Distant. "Josie, I need to discuss your test results." The words she used were clinical, sterile. Severe endometriosis. Blocked fallopian tubes. Significant scarring. But what I heard was, "You'll never be a mother." I sat in that paper gown, trying to process what she was telling me. 20% chance. With extensive surgery. Even then, no guarantees. "I'm sorry, Josie. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear." I drove home in a daze. Called in sick to work. Sat on my couch staring at the baby clothes I'd been secretly buying, hiding in my closet like some kind of shameful secret. And for the first time in 3 years, I allowed myself to really cry. But you know what the worst part was? I still thought my family would be there for me. I still believed they'd wrap me in love and tell me everything would be okay. I was so naive. The family barbecue was supposed to be a celebration. My parents, Delilah and Roman Davis, had been married 35 years, and we were gathering to plan their anniversary party. Vera brought baby Archer, 6 months old and absolutely perfect. My brother Kieran was there with his wife Sage, and even some extended family had shown up. I'd debated whether to tell them about the diagnosis. Part of me wanted to keep it private, to protect myself from their pity or their awkward silence. But another part of me, the part that still believed in family loyalty, thought maybe sharing my pain would bring us closer together. I was wrong. I waited until after dinner, when everyone was relaxed and laughing around the patio table. The sun was setting, and there was something almost magical about the moment. I took a deep breath and decided to trust them with my truth. "I need to tell you all something," I began, my voice shaking slightly. I pulled the folded medical report from my purse, I'd been carrying it around for a week, like some kind of talisman of my broken dreams. The table went quiet. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand encouragingly. I got some news from my doctor, I continued. About why I haven't been able to get pregnant. And that's when Vera laughed. Not a sympathetic laugh. Not an uncomfortable laugh. A mean laugh. Sharp and cutting. You. Pregnant. Please, Josie. Even the doctors gave up on you. The silence that followed was deafening. Nobody corrected her. Nobody defended me. They just sat there, watching as my sister turned my deepest pain into a punchline. But here's the thing about humiliation, it has a sound. It's the sound of your own heartbeat thundering in your ears while everyone else's laughter echoes around you. It's the sound of your dignity cracking like ice under pressure. I laughed too. Had to. That bitter, hollow laugh you give when you don't want people to see you bleed. When you're drowning but you pretend you're just waving. Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I guess even my own body knows better. The conversation moved on. Someone started talking about the anniversary party planning. Someone else mentioned the weather. Life continued as if my world hadn't just shattered into a million pieces right there on my parents' patio. But I couldn't move on. I sat there, holding that medical report, feeling like I was disappearing. Like I was becoming invisible in real time. And Vera just kept smiling, bouncing Archer on her lap like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just weaponized my infertility for a cheap laugh. But that wasn't even the worst part. Oh no, what happened next? That's when I realized my sister wasn't just cruel. She was calculated. Before I continue, I need to pause here for a second. Because what I'm about to tell you next is going to make you angry. It's going to make you question everything you think you know about family bonds and sisterly love. Some of you watching this might have siblings who've hurt you. Some of you might be the sibling who's done the hurting. Either way, what happens next is going to hit different for everyone. If you're feeling this story in your bones, if it's bringing up memories of your own family drama, smash that like button right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This story is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Because the barbecue, that was just the appetizer. The main course of betrayal was still coming. 3 weeks after the barbecue incident, I was at my parents' house helping Mom reorganize her kitchen when I overheard Vera on the phone in the living room. Yes, the bounce house will be perfect, she was saying. And we're doing a circus theme, so maybe face painting too? Archer might be too young to appreciate it, but the other kids will love it. My ears perked up. Circus theme. Other kids. This sounded like party planning. I kept pretending to organize the spice rack, but I was listening to every word. Oh, and make sure the cake says Happy First Birthday Archer in those bright primary colors. Red, yellow, blue, you know, really fun and festive. My heart started racing. Archer's first birthday. Of course. How had I forgotten? The guest list is pretty much finalized, Vera continued. All of Thorne's family, our cousins, Mom and Dad, Kieran and Sage. Oh, and definitely get enough party favors for about 30 people. I waited. Waited for her to mention my name. Waited for her to ask about dietary restrictions for me, or wonder what I might bring, or something. Anything. But the call ended, and my name never came up. I tried to convince myself it was an oversight. Maybe she was planning to call me separately. Maybe she assumed I knew I was invited. Maybe she was saving the best for last. But deep down, I knew the truth. Over the next few days, I watched the party planning unfold on social media like some kind of digital torture device. Vera posted pictures of decorations she was buying. Party favors. A custom birthday outfit for Archer. She created a Facebook event, Archer's Circus First Birthday Bash, and I watched as family member after family member marked themselves as attending. Everyone except me. I wasn't even invited to decline. The worst part was watching my extended family get excited. My cousin Bryony posted about how much her kids were looking forward to it. My aunt Fiona shared the event with laughing emojis. Even my parents were listed as co-hosts. And I was nothing. A ghost. Invisible. I tried bringing it up casually to Mom one day when we were having coffee. So, Archer's birthday is coming up, I said, stirring my latte with forced nonchalance. Oh yes. Mom's face lit up. Vera's going all out. It's going to be such a wonderful party. Sounds fun, I said, waiting for her to mention my invitation or ask what I was bringing. Instead, she changed the subject to her book club. I tried with Dad next, when he was working in his garage. Big party this weekend, huh? I said, handing him a wrench. Your sister knows how to throw a celebration, he replied. That little grandson of mine deserves the best. Still nothing about me being there. Finally, I swallowed my pride and approached Kieran directly. He was always the most straightforward of us siblings. Hey, what time should I be at Vera's on Saturday? I asked during a phone call. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Josie, he finally said, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. What? Maybe you should talk to Vera about that. Talk to Vera about what? About what time her nephew's birthday party starts. Another pause. I think maybe she didn't want to make you feel bad. You know, being around babies and kids right now, after. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't poor planning or miscommunication. This was deliberate. Calculated. Cruel. My sister had decided that my infertility made me too pathetic, too broken, too uncomfortable to be around her perfect family celebration. She had literally erased me from her son's life because my presence might remind people that not everyone gets their happily ever after. Saturday afternoon came, and I sat in my apartment like some kind of social exile, scrolling through Instagram stories and Facebook posts in real time. Watching my family celebrate without me. The party looked perfect, of course. Vera had outdone herself. Red and white striped tent in the backyard. Professional face painter. A actual trained circus performer doing balloon animals. Archer in a tiny ringmaster costume that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. But you know what hurt the most? Seeing how happy everyone looked. How complete the family appeared without me in the picture. Like I'd never existed at all. My cousin Bryony posted a video of all the kids playing games. My parents were in the background, laughing and clapping. Kieran was helping coordinate some kind of ring toss game. Even elderly great-aunt Millicent was there, sitting in a lawn chair with a huge smile on her face. Everyone I loved, celebrating the newest member of our family, and I was nothing. I refreshed the page obsessively, torturing myself with each new post. Photos of Archer smearing cake all over his face. Videos of the bubble machine creating magical floating spheres while children chased them around the yard. A group photo of 3 generations of the Davis family, arms linked, smiling at the camera. And then Vera posted the one that broke me. It was a picture of Archer with all his cousins, Kieran and Sage's twin boys, Marcus and Felix, plus Bryony's daughter Iris and son River. 5 beautiful children gathered around the birthday boy, all of them grinning with frosting on their faces. The caption read, Archer is so lucky to be surrounded by so much love from his amazing cousins. Family is everything. #blessed beyond measure #circus party #first birthday #family love. Family is everything. I stared at that phrase until the words blurred together. Family is everything. Unless you're broken. Unless you can't contribute to the next generation. Unless your very presence is a reminder that sometimes dreams don't come true. That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band stretched too far, too fast. I looked at myself in my phone's camera. Still in my pajamas at 4 p.m. Hair unwashed. Eyes red from crying. I looked exactly like what my family thought I was. Pathetic. Pitiable. Forgettable. But then I had a thought. A dark, twisted, beautiful thought. What if I stopped trying to be the victim they expected me to be? What if I gave them something they'd never forget? Vera wanted to exclude me from her perfect family circus? Fine. I'd give her a circus performance she'd never forget. Now, before I tell you what I did next, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to describe, it changed everything. Not just for me, but for my entire family. Some bridges, once you burn them, can never be rebuilt. If you're someone who's ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one left out, forgotten, dismissed, this next part is either going to feel like justice or it's going to terrify you. Maybe both. And if you're still here with me, if you're invested in seeing how far I was willing to go, hit that notification bell right now. Because what happens next, it's going to get intense. The question you should be asking yourself is, how far would you go to make sure you were never invisible again? You know what's funny about revenge? The planning phase is almost more intoxicating than the execution. Almost. I spent that entire Sunday researching. Not just costume rental places, though I did find the perfect shop downtown called Fantasy and Fun Costumes, but I researched the psychology of clowns. Why they're so unsettling to some people. How they occupy this weird space between childhood joy and adult terror. I learned about the uncanny valley, that uncomfortable feeling you get when something looks almost human but not quite right. I studied videos of professional clowns, analyzing their movements, their gestures, the way they could shift from delightful to disturbing with just a slight change in expression. This wasn't going to be some amateur hour costume party appearance. This was going to be a performance. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. Then I drove to Fantasy and Fun Costumes like I was on a mission. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Estelle with purple hair and kind eyes, didn't even blink when I explained what I needed. Classic clown or contemporary, she asked, leading me to a wall of colorful costumes. Something memorable, I said. She pulled out her ensemble that was perfect. Bright yellow and orange polka dot jumpsuit. Oversized red shoes. White gloves. A rainbow wig that stood up in wild tufts. And the piece de resistance, a bright red nose that squeaked when you pressed it. This one's popular with birthday party entertainers, Estelle said cheerfully. Perfect. I also rented white face paint, red lipstick, black eyeliner, and a set of basic juggling balls. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Back at home, I cleared out my living room and started practicing. First, just putting on the costume and seeing how it felt. The transformation was immediate and unsettling, even to me. In the mirror, I didn't look like Josie Davis anymore. I looked like something else entirely. I practiced walking in the oversized shoes, that distinctive clown waddle that's both comical and slightly menacing. I worked on my facial expressions, learning how to smile in a way that didn't quite reach my eyes. How to tilt my head at angles that suggested playfulness but felt predatory. The juggling was harder than I expected, but I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to look like I belonged at a children's party. By Tuesday evening, I had my performance down. By Wednesday, I'd memorized Vera's neighborhood layout from Google Street View. By Thursday, I'd practiced my entrance speech in the mirror so many times that the words felt burned into my brain. But Friday night, as I laid out the costume on my bed like I was preparing for surgery, I had a moment of doubt. What was I really doing? Was this justice or was this just crazy? I thought about calling the whole thing off. I thought about taking the high road, being the bigger person, letting Vera win through exclusion rather than stooping to whatever this was. But then I remembered her laugh at the barbecue. I remembered scrolling through those party photos, watching my family celebrate without me. I remembered that caption, "Family is everything. Family is everything. Unless you're me." Well, they were about to learn that invisible people can become very visible very quickly. Saturday morning arrived grey and overcast, like even the weather knew something dark was coming. I spent the day in a strange state of calm. I ate breakfast. I cleaned my apartment. I watered my plants. Normal activities for an abnormal day. At 2 p.m., I started getting ready. The transformation took longer than I'd practiced. Each layer of makeup, each piece of the costume, felt like I was putting on armor. Or maybe I was putting on a new identity entirely. The white face paint covered everything, my freckles, my worry lines, my humanity. The red lipstick created a smile much larger than my natural one, stretching almost to my ears. The black eyeliner made my eyes look wider, more manic. When I put on the wig and the nose, I was no longer Josie Davis, disappointed sister and failed potential mother. I was something else. Something that wouldn't be ignored. The drive to Vera's house felt like an out-of-body experience. I kept catching glimpses of myself in the rearview mirror and startling at the stranger looking back. The colorful costume was a sharp contrast to the gray interior of my Honda Civic, like I was a cartoon character who'd somehow materialized in the real world. I parked 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. The oversized shoes made a distinctive slapping sound on the sidewalk that announced my presence before anyone could see me coming. As I got closer to Vera's house, I could hear it, the sounds of celebration. Children's laughter. Adults chatting. Music playing. The same soundtrack from the Instagram stories I'd tortured myself with the week before, except now I was about to become part of it. The house looked even more elaborate in person than it had in photos. Balloons tied to the mailbox. A happy first birthday Archer banner stretched across the front porch. Cars lined both sides of the street, family cars I recognized, plus some I didn't. I walked around to the backyard, following the sound of voices and the smell of barbecue. The gate was open, typical Vera, always trusting, always assuming the world was as safe and predictable as her suburban bubble. From behind the fence, I could see everything. The red and white striped tent. The bounce house. Children running around in various states of face paint and sugar-induced chaos. Adults clustered in conversation groups, plastic cups in hand, everyone relaxed and happy. And there was Vera, holding court in the center of it all. She was wearing a flowing sundress in circus-bright colors, her hair perfectly styled despite the heat and activity. She was laughing at something my dad was saying, one arm around Archer, who was indeed dressed as a tiny ringmaster. She looked radiant. Confident. Like a woman who'd never doubted her place in the world. I watched for a few minutes, studying the layout, noting where everyone was positioned. My parents were near the food table. Kieran and Sage were supervising their twins on the bounce house. The other guests, family friends and Thorne's relatives, were scattered around the yard. And then I noticed something that made my heart race with a mixture of excitement and terror. There was actually a hired clown there. Not a professional one, it looked like a teenager in a basic costume, probably someone's kid making extra money doing balloon animals and simple magic tricks. But still. The irony was too perfect. 2 clowns at a circus-themed party. Except only one of them was invited. I took a deep breath, adjusted my wig, and pressed the squeaky nose once for luck. Showtime. I pushed open the gate and walked into the backyard like I owned the place. The first thing I did was assess the crowd, about 30 people, just like Vera had planned. Children ranging from toddlers to maybe 10 years old, plus all the adults I'd grown up calling family. Who ordered the extra entertainment? I called out in a voice that was higher and more theatrical than my normal tone. A few people looked over curiously, but most just smiled politely. At children's parties, unexpected performers aren't that unusual. Someone probably assumed Vera had booked 2 clowns for variety. I pulled out my juggling balls and started a simple routine I'd practiced. Nothing fancy, but enough to draw attention. A few kids gravitated toward me, their faces lighting up with delight. "Look, Mommy," another clown, a little girl in a tutu, exclaimed to her mother, one of Thorne's sisters, I think. I kept juggling, but my eyes were scanning the crowd, looking for recognition. Most people seemed to accept my presence without question. The hired teenage clown looked annoyed that I was stealing his thunder, but he kept doing his balloon animals without confronting me. And then I saw Kieran notice me. His smile faltered slightly. His head tilted, like he was trying to figure out why something felt off but couldn't quite place it. I made eye contact with him across the yard and gave him a theatrical wave with one of my oversized gloved hands. He frowned, said something to Sage, and started walking in my direction. This was it. The moment of truth. I deliberately dropped one of the juggling balls and made a big show of chasing it, weaving between party guests, getting closer to the main cluster of adults near the food table. Closer to my parents. Closer to Vera. Oopsie. I exclaimed loudly as I bent to pick up the ball. Silly me. Several people laughed. Children giggled. I was charming them, winning them over, making myself part of their celebration before anyone could object. But Kieran was still approaching, his expression growing more suspicious by the second. "Excuse me," he said, reaching out to tap my shoulder. "I think there might be some confusion here." That's when I spun around, looked him directly in the eye, and smiled my painted red smile. "Hello, brother," I said in my normal voice, just loud enough for him to hear but quiet enough that no one else would notice. The color drained from his face. "Josie," he whispered. "Surprise," I said, returning to my theatrical clown voice. "I heard there was a party, and I just couldn't stay away." Kieran looked around frantically, probably trying to figure out how to handle this situation without causing a scene. But I wasn't going to make it easy for him. Before he could say another word, I pranced away toward a group of children who were watching the hired clown make a balloon dog. "Room for one more performer?" I asked sweetly. The kids cheered. The teenage clown looked annoyed but didn't want to disappoint his young audience by refusing. And that's how I ended up in a balloon animal making competition with a 17-year-old at my nephew's birthday party while dressed as a vengeful clown. I wish I could say I won, but my balloon giraffe looked more like a deflated snake. The kids didn't care, though. They were just excited to have two clowns instead of one. But while I was making terrible balloon animals and telling jokes that were just slightly too edgy for a children's party, I was also watching. Waiting. Building toward the moment when Vera would finally notice me. Because she hadn't yet. She was still holding court near the birthday cake, completely oblivious to the fact that her excluded sister was currently entertaining her guests in full costume. The irony was delicious. Now, I need to pause here for a second because I can feel some of you judging me. Some of you are probably thinking, "Josie, this is crazy. This is too far. You're traumatizing children just to get back at your sister." And you know what? You might be right. But here's what I need you to understand. I had been erased. Completely. My own sister had decided that my pain was more important than my presence. That her comfort mattered more than my dignity. When someone makes you invisible, sometimes the only way to be seen again is to become impossible to ignore. If you've ever felt erased by the people who are supposed to love you most, if you've ever been the family scapegoat or the one who gets left behind, then you understand what was driving me in that moment. And if you don't understand, well, count yourself lucky. But don't you dare judge me until you've stood in my oversized clown shoes. Now, if you're still with me, if you want to see how this all plays out, make sure you're subscribed because we're about to reach the point of no return. The point where family dinners become impossible and Christmas cards stop coming. The point where I stop being the victim and become something else entirely. It was my dad who recognized me next. I was in the middle of an elaborate pratfall, tripping over my own oversized shoes and tumbling dramatically into a cluster of lawn chairs, when I heard him gasp. "Oh my God. Josie." The name carried across the yard like a stone thrown into still water, creating ripples of recognition and confusion. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The party's soundtrack of laughter and chatter shifted into something more uncertain. I picked myself up from the tangle of chairs, brushed off my polka dot costume, and gave an exaggerated bow. "The one and only," I announced, pulling off my red nose with a theatrical flourish. And that's when Vera finally saw me. If I live to be 100, I will never forget the look on her sister's face in that moment. It was like watching someone's entire reality crack and reshape itself in real time. Confusion, then recognition, then horror, then something that might have been fear. "What?" she began, but the words seemed to stick in her throat. The party had gone completely silent now. Even the children seemed to sense that something significant was happening, though they couldn't understand what. I walked toward Vera slowly, my oversized shoes slapping against the concrete patio with each step. The sound was absurdly loud in the sudden quiet. "Surprise, sister dear," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. "Thanks so much for the invitation." "Oh wait." I made a show of looking around at all the stunned faces. "You didn't send me one, did you?" Vera's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Thorne stepped up beside her, looking confused and concerned. "Josie, what are you doing?" Mom's voice came from somewhere behind me, tight with anxiety. I spun around to face her, my rainbow wig bouncing with the movement. I'm attending my nephew's first birthday party, of course. Family is everything, right? I looked directly at Vera as I said the last part. At least, that's what I read on Instagram. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Some of the guests who didn't know our family dynamics looked around awkwardly, clearly sensing tension but not understanding its source. And then little Archer, bless his innocent heart, clapped his hands together and giggled at me from his position in Vera's arms. "Quown," he said happily, reaching toward my colorful costume. The sound of his baby voice seemed to break whatever spell had fallen over the party. People started murmuring to each other. The hired teenage clown awkwardly packed up his balloon supplies. A few of the younger children started asking their parents what was happening. But I only had eyes for Vera. She looked like she was going to be sick. Her face had gone pale beneath her perfectly applied makeup, and she was clutching Archer so tightly that he started to fuss. "You need to leave," she said quietly, but her voice shook. "Do I?" I tilted my head at an angle that I knew looked unsettling. "But I'm family. And family is everything. You said so yourself." "Josie." Dad stepped forward, his hands raised in a peacekeeping gesture. "Maybe we should talk about this privately." "Privately?" I laughed, and even to my own ears it sounded wrong. Too sharp. Too bitter. Like how you all privately decided I wasn't welcome here. Like how you privately excluded me from my own nephew's birthday party because my broken uterus might harsh your mellow. Several people gasped. Someone's child started crying. "That's enough," Kieran said firmly, moving to stand between me and Vera. "You're scaring people." "Am I?" I looked around at the faces staring back at me. Fear, confusion, embarrassment, anger, all of it mixed together in expressions I'd never seen before on these familiar faces. Good. Maybe it's time someone in this family felt uncomfortable for once. And then I did something I'd been planning but hadn't been sure I'd have the courage to execute. I started walking toward the elaborate 3-tier circus-themed birthday cake. You know that moment in movies when everything slows down right before the disaster? When you can see the catastrophe coming but you can't stop it, like watching a car accident in slow motion? That's what happened next. I approached that beautiful birthday cake, 3 tiers of circus-themed perfection with fondant circus animals and Happy First Birthday Archer written in bright primary colors, and I could see everyone around me starting to understand what I was about to do. "Josie, no," Mom whispered. "Don't," Vera said, louder this time, genuine panic in her voice. But I was past the point of no return. Past the point of being the good sister, the understanding one, the one who always took the high road. I reached the cake table and turned to face the crowd one last time. 30 pairs of eyes stared back at me, waiting to see just how far the family disappointment would go. "You know what's funny?" I said, my painted smile stretching impossibly wide. "I spent so many years trying to be perfect for you people. Trying to be the good daughter, the supportive sister, the understanding aunt-to-be. I brought casseroles when you were sick. I babysat when you needed date nights. I listened to your problems and celebrated your victories even when my own heart was breaking." My voice was getting louder, more theatrical, more unhinged with each word. But the moment I needed support, the moment I needed my family to love me through the worst thing that ever happened to me, what did you do? You turned my pain into a punchline. You excluded me from the family. You made me invisible. Tears were streaming down my face now, cutting tracks through the white face paint, but I couldn't stop. "Well, guess what, family? You wanted a clown. You got one." And with that, I grabbed the edge of the cake table and gave it a sharp push. The beautiful 3-tier masterpiece wobbled for a moment, time suspended like a held breath, and then crashed to the ground in a spectacular explosion of frosting, fondant, and shattered dreams. The sound was magnificent. Ceramic plates breaking. Frosting splattering across the patio. The elaborate circus animals that had taken hours to craft reduced to colorful smears on the concrete. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. We all just stood there staring at the wreckage of Archer's first birthday cake. And then all hell broke loose. Archer started crying, not the gentle fussing of a tired baby, but the kind of wailing that comes from being genuinely startled and upset. Vera was shouting, though I couldn't make out the words over the chaos. Several of the adult guests started herding their children toward the exit. The teenage clown grabbed his supplies and practically ran for the gate. But through it all, I just stood there in my ridiculous costume, covered in frosting, feeling more alive than I had in months. "What is wrong with you?" Vera screamed, her voice cracking with rage and hurt. She'd handed Archer to Thorn and was standing in the ruins of the cake, her beautiful dress splattered with chocolate and vanilla frosting. "What's wrong with me?" I laughed, wiping cake from my face with one oversized glove. "What's wrong with Emmy?" "I'll tell you what's wrong with me. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of being the family disappointment. I'm tired of pretending that your cruelty is somehow acceptable because we share DNA. You're insane," she said, and there was genuine fear in her eyes now. "You've completely lost your mind." "Maybe I have," I agreed cheerfully. "But you know what? Insane people don't get excluded from birthday parties. Insane people don't get ignored. Insane people get attention." Dad stepped forward, his face red with embarrassment and anger. "Josie, you need to leave. Right now." "Oh, now you see me." I spun to face him, my rainbow wig spinning with me. "Now I exist. Funny how I only become visible when I'm causing a scene." "You're embarrassing yourself," Mom said, her voice shaking. "And you're traumatizing these children." I looked around at the remaining party guests. About half had already fled, taking their traumatized children with them. The ones who remained were staring at me like I was some kind of dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. And maybe I was. "You want to know what's traumatizing?" I said, addressing the crowd like I was giving a performance. "Spending 3 years trying to get pregnant. Having your sister mock your infertility at a family barbecue. Getting excluded from your nephew's birthday party because your broken body makes everyone uncomfortable." I pulled off my rainbow wig and threw it into the cake debris. "You want to know what's embarrassing? Having your own family decide you're too pathetic to be seen in public." I started pulling off the oversized gloves, the costume jewelry, all the theatrical elements that had transformed me from Josie the victim into something else entirely. "But you know what the most traumatizing thing of all is?" I looked directly at Vera as I spoke. "Realizing that the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally will throw you away the moment you stop being useful." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't shock or confusion. This was the kind of silence that comes after a truth so ugly that nobody wants to acknowledge it. Finally, Vera spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Get out." "Gladly," I said, stepping carefully around the cake debris. "But don't think this is over. Don't think you can go back to pretending I don't exist. Because every time you look at these photos, every time you tell the story of Archer's first birthday party, you're going to remember me." I paused at the gate and turned back one last time. "Family is everything, right, Vera? Well, congratulations. You just destroyed yours." The drive home was surreal. I was still in most of the clown costume, just the jumpsuit now, with my regular face showing through the smeared remains of white paint. I looked like I was emerging from a cocoon, half transformed back into human form. My phone started buzzing before I even got to my apartment. Text after text after text. "Kieran, what the hell was that?" "Mom, Josie, we need to talk. Now." "Dad, I'm disappointed in you." "Sage, the twins are asking why Aunt Josie was scary." And then, the one that made my stomach drop. "Vera, don't ever contact me or my family again." I sat in my car in my apartment parking lot, still in my polka dot costume, reading message after message of anger, disappointment, and hurt. And slowly, the adrenaline that had carried me through the afternoon began to fade, replaced by something much more complicated. What had I done? I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Streaks of white face paint still clung to my hairline. My eyes were red from crying. I looked exactly like what Vera had called me, insane. Inside my apartment, I peeled off the costume piece by piece, like I was shedding evidence of a crime. The polka dot jumpsuit. The oversized shoes. The props and makeup that had transformed me from victim to perpetrator. But even after I'd showered off the last of the face paint and put on my normal clothes, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd fundamentally changed something that couldn't be changed back. Over the next few days, the full scope of the damage became clear. My parents called to tell me I wasn't welcome at family gatherings until I got help. Kieran said Sage was uncomfortable having me around their children. Extended family members who'd been at the party started posting vague social media messages about toxic family members and protecting your peace. But the worst was Vera's response. She changed all her social media to private. She blocked my phone number. When I tried to reach out through Mom to apologize, not for my feelings, but for the method I'd chosen to express them, I was told that Vera was not ready to hear from me. 3 weeks after the party, I received a formal letter in the mail. A cease and desist order, drafted by a lawyer, demanding that I stay away from Vera's family and property. My own sister had gotten a restraining order against me. I sat in my empty apartment, holding that legal document, and realized that in trying to make myself visible, I'd made myself completely disappear. The thing about burning bridges is that you don't always realize how much you need them until they're gone. 2 months after the party, I was completely isolated from my family. Christmas came and went without an invitation to any gatherings. New Year's passed in solitude. Archer's 2nd birthday was celebrated without my knowledge. Vera had apparently learned the value of truly private celebrations. I tried to rebuild. I threw myself into work, took up pottery classes, started seeing a therapist Dr. Chen recommended. I told myself I was better off without people who could discard me so easily. But late at night, when my apartment felt too quiet and my phone never rang, I wondered if I'd traded being invisible for being completely alone. The isolation gave me time to think, though. Time to really examine what had driven me to put on that costume and destroy my nephew's birthday party. And here's what I realized: I hadn't been fighting for inclusion. I'd been fighting for acknowledgement of my pain. I'd wanted them to see how much they'd hurt me, to understand that their actions had consequences. But the method I'd chosen, the theatrical revenge, the public humiliation, the destruction of a child's celebration, that wasn't about justice. That was about making them hurt the way I was hurting. And it worked. I'd succeeded in hurting them. But in the process, I'd proven every terrible thing they'd ever thought about me. 6 months after the party, I got an unexpected visitor. I was grading papers on a Saturday afternoon when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I could see Kieran standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable but determined. I opened the door cautiously. "Hi," he said. "Hi." We stared at each other for a moment, two siblings who'd become strangers. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let him enter. He looked around my apartment, the same space I'd practiced my clown routine in, the same mirror where I'd perfected my unsettling smile. "How are you?" he asked, settling onto my couch. "Alone," I answered honestly. "How's everyone else?" "Hurt. Confused. Worried about you." "Worried?" I laughed bitterly. "That's a funny way of showing it." Kieran sighed. "Josie, what you did at the party, it scared people. It scared the kids. It scared Vera." "Good," I said, and then immediately felt ashamed of how quickly the word had come out. "Is it good? Really? Is this what you wanted?" I sat down across from him, suddenly exhausted. "I wanted them to see me," I said quietly. "I wanted them to acknowledge that I exist, that I matter, that excluding me had consequences. And now I'm more invisible than ever." We sat in silence for a while. Finally, Kieran spoke again. "Vera's been having nightmares." I looked up, surprised. "About clowns. About you. About what you might do next." He met my eyes. "She's genuinely afraid of you, Josie." The words hit me like a physical blow. My little sister, the golden child, the successful one, the one who'd always seemed so confident and untouchable, was afraid of me. "I would never hurt her," I said. "Or Archer. You know that, right?" "I know that. But she doesn't." That performance, it wasn't just angry, Josie. It was unhinged. It was scary. Voice-breaking. I put my head in my hands. "I don't know who I was that day," I whispered. "I don't know what happened to me." "You were hurt," Kieran said gently. You were in pain and you wanted everyone else to feel it too. Yeah. But Josie, hurt people don't always hurt people. You had a choice. He was right, and we both knew it. I need to pause here because I can see some of you in the comments defending me. Saying Vera got what she deserved. Saying my family had it coming. Saying that sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And I appreciate that. I really do. It means something to know that people understand why I snapped, why I did what I did. But here's what I need you to understand. Being right about the hurt doesn't make you right about the response. Yes, my family treated me cruelly. Yes, the exclusion was deliberate and painful. Yes, they should have supported me instead of mocking me. But traumatizing children at a birthday party, destroying a celebration that could never be recreated, becoming the kind of person that my own sister fears. That's not justice. That's just more hurt, piled on top of the original hurt, creating a mountain of pain that buries everyone. If you're watching this and you're in a place where you're planning your own revenge against family members who've wronged you, please hear me. There are better ways. There have to be better ways. Because what I'm about to tell you next, it's going to show you the real cost of choosing revenge over healing. After Kieran left that day, I spent weeks thinking about what he'd said. About choices and consequences and the difference between being hurt and being dangerous. I started writing letters I never sent. Apologies I wasn't sure I meant. Explanations that felt like excuses even to me. And then, 8 months after the party, something happened that changed everything. I was at the grocery store on a Tuesday evening, minding my own business in the cereal aisle, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Josie. I turned around and there was Bryony, my cousin who'd been at the party with her kids. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. Hi, I said cautiously. Hi. She hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. How are you doing? I'm surviving. You? The same, I guess. She paused, looking around the empty aisle. Listen, can we talk? Maybe grab coffee or something? 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a corner booth at the diner down the street, both of us nursing cups of coffee that had gone cold while we talked. I need to tell you something, Bryony said finally. About the party. About what happened after you left. My stomach clenched. Okay. Vera, she didn't handle it well. Not just the immediate aftermath, but the weeks and months after. She became obsessed with the idea that you might come back, might do something else. I wouldn't. I know. I think I always knew. But Vera, she started seeing threats everywhere. She hired a security system for the house. She wouldn't take Archer to public places without Thorn. She started having panic attacks. I felt sick. And then, Bryony continued, her voice getting quieter, she started restricting who could see Archer. First it was just you, obviously. But then she decided that anyone who had contact with you was potentially dangerous too. What do you mean? She cut off your parents, Josie. Completely. Hasn't spoken to Uncle Roman or Aunt Delilah in months. Won't let them see their grandson. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? She found out that Kieran had visited you, and she lost it. Said he was enabling your behavior, that he was choosing you over Archer's safety. They haven't spoken since. My hands were shaking. I set down my coffee cup before I could drop it. She's isolated herself from almost everyone, Bryony continued. The only family she talks to now is Thorn's side, because they weren't at the party. She's created this bubble where she feels safe, but it's getting smaller and smaller. Because of me. Because of fear. Fear that started with what happened at the party, but it's grown way beyond that now. I stared at the table, trying to process what she was telling me. My parents haven't seen Archer in months. Not since Christmas. Vera said they chose their loyalty to you over her child's safety. But they didn't choose me. They haven't spoken to me either. I know. That's what's so heartbreaking about this whole situation. She's punishing everyone, including herself. I felt like I was going to be sick. Bryony, what have I done? She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You made a mistake, Josie. A big one. But what's happening now, that's not all on you. Vera's response has become its own problem. We sat in silence for a while, both lost in the weight of damaged family bonds and unintended consequences. Finally, I asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Is there any way to fix this? Bryony was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she said eventually. Maybe. But it would take something big. Something that shows Vera she's safe, that you're not the threat she's built you up to be in her mind. Like what? I don't know, Josie. I honestly don't know. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Bryony had told me. My parents, who'd raised me and loved me despite my flaws, couldn't see their grandson because of what I'd done. Kieran, who'd tried to be the bridge between Vera and me, had been cut off too. And Vera. Vera was living in fear because I'd turned myself into something frightening. The person I'd hurt most with my revenge wasn't even the person I'd been angry at. It was Archer, who would grow up with a mother consumed by anxiety and a family fractured beyond recognition. I'd wanted to matter. I'd wanted to be seen. I'd wanted to prove that excluding me had consequences. Well, mission accomplished. The consequences were bigger than I'd ever imagined. The next morning, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. I called a lawyer. Not to fight the restraining order or defend my actions, but to do something that went against every instinct I had for self-preservation. I wanted to give Vera something she needed more than an apology. I wanted to give her proof that she was safe. The document I had drafted was simple. A legally binding agreement that I would have no contact with Vera, Thorne, or Archer for a period of 5 years. No attempts at communication, no showing up at events, no reaching out through intermediaries. Complete separation, with legal consequences if I violated the terms. But here's the important part. The agreement also included a clause stating that this restriction didn't extend to other family members. That Vera's fear of me couldn't be used to justify cutting off our parents, our brother, or anyone else who wanted to maintain relationships with both of us. It was the hardest thing I've ever signed. 5 years without seeing my nephew grow up. 5 years without the possibility of reconciliation with my sister. 5 years of accepting that I'd become someone who needed to be legally restrained from her own family. But if it gave Vera the peace of mind she needed to reconnect with the rest of our family, if it let my parents see their grandson again, if it allowed some healing to begin, then it was worth it. I had my lawyer send the agreement to Vera's attorney with a simple note. This isn't an apology for my feelings, but it is an acknowledgement that my actions were wrong. I hope this helps you feel safe enough to let the people who love you back into your life. 3 days later, I got a response. Vera had signed it. The months that followed were strange. I was more isolated than ever from Vera and Archer, but gradually, other relationships began to heal. My parents started calling again. Tentative conversations at first, then longer talks about everything except the elephant in the room. They were seeing Archer again, they told me carefully. Vera was slowly letting people back in. Kieran reached out too, grateful that his son could have a relationship with his grandmother and grandfather again. But the person who surprised me most was myself. Without the consuming anger and hurt that had driven me to put on that clown costume, I had space to really examine who I'd become and who I wanted to be going forward. I started volunteering at a support group for women dealing with infertility. Not as a leader or expert, but as someone who understood the specific kind of grief that comes with dreams that may never be realized. I learned that I wasn't the only one who'd felt erased by family members who didn't understand. I wasn't the only one who'd been mocked for something beyond my control. I wasn't the only one who'd considered doing something drastic to force acknowledgement of my pain. But I was possibly the only one who'd actually gone through with it. Talking to these women, sharing stories and coping strategies, I began to understand something important. My pain had been real and valid, but my response had been about power, not healing. I'd wanted to force my family to see me, to acknowledge me, to suffer for their treatment of me. But healing, real healing, doesn't come from making other people hurt. A year after signing the agreement, I made another decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I adopted a dog. I know that sounds anticlimactic after everything else, but hear me out. Her name was Luna, a 3-year-old rescue mix with one blue eye and one brown eye. She'd been returned to the shelter twice because she was too anxious and difficult to handle. When I met her, she was cowering in the back of her kennel, suspicious of every human who approached. The shelter volunteer warned me that she might never fully trust people, that she might always be skittish and reactive. But something about her broken spirit called to something in my broken spirit. I took her home, and slowly, patiently, I worked to earn her trust. Not by forcing interactions or demanding affection, but by simply being consistently kind. By creating safety without expecting gratitude. And as Luna began to heal, as she learned that not all humans were threats, as she discovered that she could be loved without being perfect, I began to heal too. I learned patience. I learned that love isn't something you can force or demand or dramatize into existence. I learned that healing happens quietly, in small moments, through consistent kindness rather than grand gestures. Most importantly, I learned that the opposite of being invisible isn't being infamous. The opposite of being invisible is being genuinely seen and valued for who you are, not for the chaos you can create. We're coming to the end of my story now, but before I tell you how this all wraps up, I need to address something. Some of you are probably waiting for the reunion. The tearful reconciliation where Vera and I hug it out and realize we've both learned important lessons. The happy ending where family bonds triumph over everything. And maybe, 5 years from now when the agreement expires, that might happen. Maybe Vera and I will find a way back to each other. Maybe Archer will know his Aunt Josie someday. But maybe not. Maybe some mistakes are too big to undo. Maybe some trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Maybe some bridges, once burned, leave scars that last forever. And that's okay too. Because this story isn't really about whether my family forgives me. It's about whether I can forgive myself. It's about whether I can learn from my mistakes without being destroyed by them. It's about whether I can find meaning and connection and love in the life I have now, rather than the life I thought I was supposed to have. If you've stayed with me this long, if you've listened to this whole messy tale of family betrayal and revenge and consequences, then you're probably dealing with some messy family dynamics of your own. And here's what I want you to know: your pain is valid. Your anger is understandable. Your desire to be seen and valued and included is completely human. But please learn from my story. Don't let your hurt turn you into someone you don't recognize. Don't sacrifice your integrity for the temporary satisfaction of revenge. Find better ways. Seek therapy. Join support groups. Set boundaries. Walk away if you need to. But don't put on the clown costume, metaphorically or literally. Because the thing about becoming a cautionary tale is that you have to live with the consequences long after everyone else has moved on from the drama. So here's how this story really ends. 2 weeks ago, I got a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a child's drawing, the kind of stick figure art I'd gotten used to from my students, but this one was different. It was a family portrait. Stick figure mommy, stick figure daddy, stick figure baby, stick figure grandma and grandpa, stick figure uncle and aunt with their twin boys. And in the corner, separate from the rest of the family but still on the same page, was another stick figure. This one had a rainbow scribble for hair and was holding what looked like a small dog. At the bottom, in careful 3-year-old handwriting, someone had helped spell out, Aunt Josie and Luna. There was no note. No explanation. No return address. But I know who drew it, or at least who helped him draw it. Archer is 3 now. Old enough to hold a crayon, old enough to ask questions about family photos where one face is conspicuously missing. Someone, maybe Vera, maybe my parents, maybe Kieran, someone told him about me. About his Aunt Josie who loves him but can't visit right now. And somehow, this little boy who was traumatized by a clown at his first birthday party, who grew up hearing whispered conversations about the scary aunt who wasn't allowed at family gatherings, somehow he still found room for me in his family portrait. I have that drawing framed on my kitchen table now, next to Luna's food bowl and my morning coffee cup. It's the first family photo I've been included in since the day I destroyed everything. And you know what the strangest part is? For the first time in years, I don't feel invisible. Not because I demanded to be seen. Not because I forced acknowledgement through dramatic gestures or public confrontations. But because a 3-year-old boy, with the pure heart that children have before the world teaches them to hold grudges, decided that family includes everyone, even the ones who make mistakes. Even the ones who dress up like clowns and ruin birthday parties. I still have 2 more years left on my agreement with Vera. 2 more years of legal separation from my sister and nephew. 2 more years to keep working on becoming the kind of person who deserves to be in that family portrait. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I have hope that maybe, eventually, I can find my way back to where I belong. Not by forcing my way in. Not by causing scenes or demanding attention or proving points. But by earning it. By becoming someone worth including. By being the Aunt Archer sees in his drawing, separate for now, but still part of the family. Still loved, despite everything. The clown costume is long gone, donated to a theater group that probably has no idea of its dark history. The red nose, the rainbow wig, the oversized shoes, all of it disposed of like evidence of a crime I'd rather forget. But I kept one thing from that day. The white face paint. Not because I'm planning another performance, but as a reminder. A reminder of how easy it is to transform yourself into something unrecognizable when you're consumed by hurt and anger. A reminder of how quickly you can become the villain in your own story. Sometimes, late at night when Luna is sleeping at my feet and my apartment feels too quiet, I look at that tube of white face paint in my bathroom drawer and I remember who I was on that terrible, destructive day. And then I remember who I am now. Who I'm working to become. The woman in Archer's drawing. The aunt with the rainbow hair and the small dog, separate but still included, hurt but still healing, broken but still part of the family. That's who I want to be when those 5 years are up. That's who I'm becoming, one day at a time. So that's my story. The tale of how I became my family's worst nightmare and then slowly, carefully, worked my way back toward being their sister again. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to this whole messy confession, then you probably understand something important about family, about forgiveness, about the difference between being seen and being notorious. And if you're dealing with your own family drama, your own feelings of invisibility, your own urges for dramatic revenge, please remember this. The best way to matter to people isn't to make them afraid of you. It's to make them love you. Not through force or manipulation or grand gestures, but through the slow, steady work of being someone worth loving. It's harder than putting on a clown costume. It takes longer than crashing a party. It's less dramatic than destroying a cake. But it's the only way that really works. The only way that lasts. The only way that gets you included in a 3-year-old's family portrait, even when you're not allowed at family gatherings. So here's my question for you, the same one I started with. Have you ever been pushed so far by family that you considered doing something completely unhinged? If the answer is yes, I hope my story helps you choose differently. I hope it shows you that the temporary satisfaction of revenge isn't worth the permanent cost of becoming someone you don't recognize. And if you found something valuable in this messy tale of mine, if it made you think or feel or reconsider your own family dynamics, then please do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that explore the complicated, beautiful, terrible truth about family bonds. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And leave a comment telling me about your own journey from hurt to healing. Because we're all works in progress, aren't we? We're all figuring out how to love imperfect people in imperfect ways, how to forgive when forgiveness seems impossible, how to hold on to hope when everything feels broken. We're all just trying to find our place in the family portrait, even when we've made mistakes that seem unforgivable. Even when we've been the clown at someone else's party. Even when we've had to learn, the hard way, that sometimes the last laugh isn't worth having at all. Sweet dreams, everyone. And remember, family is everything, but everything includes the messy parts, the broken parts, the parts that are still healing. Even the clowns. Especially the clowns. Maybe most of all, the recovering clowns who are learning to be human again.